Hey guys, Damien here. As I continue to interview the top MSPs in the world, one thing has become incredibly clear. It's time that we let go. Even more than that, every time I focus on my zone of genius and get out of the way and do the very few things I'm good at and delegate to others, I'm ready for that next level of growth. One way that I could help you is with Servosity. We co-manage your backups and disaster recovery so you can focus on what you do best, let us do the rest. And then what we do is we test the backups every single day so you never have to worry. If you'd like to engage us or just learn more, click the link below. What did improv teach you that helped you apply that in the business world or in the sales world?
Really just thinking on your feet and not like, again, kind of when I would go to networking events and that fight or flight mechanism kicks in, or you're in sales and fight or flight kicks in and you're not thinking clearly, but it's just, you got to learn to just think on your feet. And you also really, like with improv, kind of builds your confidence every time you do it. You're like, wow, I was pretty funny. Like people are cracking up. And like, so it's kind of the same thing with, you start being on these panels, you start having discussions and it's like, wow, maybe I know a little more than I think I know. And I'm a little smarter than I think I am. And I talk a little better than I think I can.
Hey guys, Damien Stevens, host of MSP Mindset, founder and CEO of Servosity. Today, I continue my mission to interview 100 of the fastest growing and most interesting MSPs on the planet. Today, I had a very interesting conversation with Jason Vanzin about the fear of networking and talking to people. Now, he resorted to dragging his wife to networking events to get him to do it. Have you ever felt that fear in getting out of your comfort zone and let it paralyze you? Learn from Jason and how he leveraged things like improv, comedy, and even boxing to get out of his comfort zone. If you want to learn that and how to build a top 500 MSP like Jason, join us today. So we were talking kind of backstage about both being introverts. So how do you go from the kind of what I would see as the stereotypical, introverted IT guy to all of a sudden you're the one saying, I'll handle sales?
Yes. So I started networking. I used to drag my wife to a lot of networking events because she's not an extrovert or an introvert. So, she would go with me and it was kind of like, just made it easier for me because she would be chit chatting with people and the people loved her and then they'd end up talking to me. And I'm an introvert, but I could probably sit down with anybody one-on-one, no matter like what their status and, that is in the world and talk to them. My problem is like groups and I kind of get quiet, but, so I just kind of forced myself. And then I might've mentioned this when we talked previously, but, I knew that was a problem because I knew I would go to networking events. Like if I went by myself and as soon as I start talking, like the fight or flight mechanism's kicking in my head and it's just like, I don't know what to say. Like, it's like, hi, how you, I'm Jason. All right. I don't know what to say next. My brain's like shutting off.
Right.
And then also kind of like dealing with like sales and you're getting pushback and you're getting like, as an introvert, you tend not to like conflict as much. And like, so I just kind of like, and I joined not an IT peer group. I kind of got involved in this, this small local kind of group. And, we would meet every week and talk about our challenges and stuff. And I kind of was just like, it's kind of cool to come in and say, I did this, like I did this thing that they would never expect me to do. Cause they kind of knew my personality. They were all extroverts. And, so one day I was just like, I should check out, improv. So I went and found local improv and I signed up for it. Also, like I was thinking about the conflict stuff. I'm like, what's the most kind of scary thing about conflict? I'm thinking about, well, I can get in a fist fight. It's probably like the scariest thing. So I signed up for boxing.
Wow.
And like, so for this kind of period of time, I started doing improv and boxing. It did kind of rewire my brain a little bit.
Yeah.
Just because when you're doing improv and you're in front of an audience with other people, kind of in this troupe or whatever, like you have no clue what they're going to say. And every time I tried to plan without, I'm going to come out with this idea they have no clue that's your idea, and then they say something else and just say like you can't try and pre-plan, like, and if every time you do you screw up the whole thing. So it's like, just learning how to think on your feet like that kind of started helping in the networking events. And then the boxing, it's just like you get to the point where you spar, like there's kind of levels, but like when you get to the second, kind of intermediate, you start sparring, and it's like, if you're going to kind of overcome that, it's like, what's the worst that's going to happen, right? So that really, I guess, kind of helped a lot. And then I'm not sure
what did improv teach you that helped you, apply that in the business world or in the sales world?
Really just thinking on your feet, and not like, again, kind of when I would go to networking events and that fight or flight mechanism kicks in, or you're in sales and fight or flight kicks in, and you're not thinking clearly, so you come off awkward, or you don't say, so like just improv just kind of got you saying like kind of what comes to your mind without, obviously you got to watch you don't say something that's offensive or something, but like kind of just introverts kind of process internally before they put it out there.
Yeah.
So it kind of helped to like, okay, I don't have to sit here and like process the heck out of this thing or try to think of the most perfect thing to ever say, on the face of the earth. Let me just like say it. So, whether it's like, now, so like now if I'm on a panel or something, I'm not saying I still get anxious. I'm still like, stressed out about it. But it's just, you kind of learn how to handle it. Like somebody asked a question. I was on a healthcare panel a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, I had no clue what the questions were going to be, just like, I don't know whether, I don't know what your questions are going to be, but it's just, you kind of learn to just think on your feet. And you also really, like with improv, like it kind of builds your confidence every time you do it. You're like, wow, it was pretty funny. Like people are cracking up, and like people give you compliments and stuff. You're like, wow, maybe I'm not a total goofball, maybe. So it's kind of the same thing with, you start being on these panels, you start having discussions, and it's like, wow, maybe I know a little more than I think I know, and I'm a little smarter than I think I am, and I can talk a little better than I think I can. So
yeah. So how far did you take improv? Did you go on stage besides practice? Like where did you go with that? Yeah.
So you take like I went through 2 classes, like the first level and second level. I didn't go to the third level. I did kind of start doing some shows like they were just outside the class. Like there was another guy that we kind of had a duo. It was kind of funny. We did this duo. We called it middle management. And so I'd come out in like a sport jacket, and he was like as tall. He would come out in a sport jacket. He was like as tall. I mean, he was definitely nerdy looking, but he was so animated. And I'm kind of like people always would tell me you're like Jerry Seinfeld, like you're real like kind of monotone, but then you got these zingers. So we would come out together. We'd have, I think we might have had one bad show, but we kind of did it for a while. And then I was doing boxing for a while, and then I got like hurt my ribs multiple times and be out for like 6 weeks before I come back. And then I just kind of like step back and was like, I gotta remember why I started all this. Like this isn't like the purpose isn't to get on Saturday Night Live or to become some type of champion. I'm just here, trying to get over these fears. So I kind of took what I learned from it at that point and kind of just let's move on to the next learning experience.
What did boxing teach you? Because I kind of get improv thinking on your feet. What did boxing teach you? Right, you probably don't need to duck in your average sales meeting.
Yeah, but I mean, again, kind of conflict, right? I think most people are afraid of conflict because they're afraid it's going to escalate to something physical. So it's like if I can not worry about the physical so much. And again, every time I went to a spar, I don't think you ever get rid of it. Which one of the guys that was in one of my groups early on, he was he would help medical researchers raise money for their research. He's like up in Boston, kind of around that whole biotech space. And he was super extroverted. And I remember we were just talking about one day, and he's like, well, what's it like when you're like going to speak? And I'm like, well, my armpits start sweating. And, I'm like, my heart's pounding. I'm like, and he's like, same thing. I think I'm excited.
Yeah.
So it's like he has the same physical experience, but he sees it as he's excited to do this, where I'm seeing it as like fear of doing it. So boxing's kind of like gives you that. Well, I'm fearful going in boxing. And at the gym, I mean, it was a legit boxing gym. It wasn't like some kind of aerobics boxing gym. It was like legit boxing. And you didn't, there was no weight classes in sparring or weight classes. And so you'd spar with anybody. And so I'd be like super nervous, got my introvert, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm going to do this. But then just kind of fighting through that and going to do it and surviving. And then you're like, okay, that wasn't so bad. It was the same with improv. Every time I'd go do improv, I'm like stressed out as can be. I'd be in the back, like green room, like pacing back and forth. And then you go out and do it and you come off, you're like, I can't believe I did that. You're like, it's like skydiving or something. Like, oh my goodness. It's like such a rush. And it just kind of builds up the, like, I think, confidence that like, wow, I was able to do that. What else can I do? And then you just kind of keep, I always tell my kids this, like, you're not going to get the courage like ahead of time. You're going to build that courage as you do the thing that you were afraid of. And then you pulled it off and you're like, that wasn't that bad. And you do another thing that's a little more challenging and you just kind of keep doing that. And it's like lifting weights, right? Like you're not going to get stronger by just looking at the bar and never putting it up. So
yeah. Courage is doing the hard things in the presence of fear, not having fear.
Yeah.
You're still going to have that fear either way. What other fears that come to mind have you had to face as you built this business?
I'd say fear of failure. I guess like,
sure.
I mean, again, this is the other kind of epiphany I had at some point of just like, talking to my kids, especially my son. I was like, you're not a failure as long as you keep trying. You're only a failure like when you stop. I'm like, think about the people that don't try. That's who you look at and you think, wow, that person's like, that person's a failure. Like you don't think somebody's a failure because they actually failed at whatever they're trying to do if they keep trying to do it. So that kind of like just, I mean, I guess that's kind of how you overcome it. Just like, okay, well, just keep trying. Like if you decide you're going to climb Mount Everest, maybe you don't make it the first time. It don't mean you're a failure if you go back and you do it the second time or third time. Not that I'm going to do that, but I'm just saying like, kind of get the idea. So I'd say that's a fear. And then I mentioned my son has he still has special needs, but he's older now. So basically been one income as long as I've been married and had kids. So that's like always a fear of like, holy crap, I mean, even like as I've done better, it's still a fear. Like you just wait, like, is this stuff just all going to disappear and then I'm not going to be able to take care of my family? And so that's, I would say, probably the biggest fear. One of the things that probably motivates me a lot. I mean, I grew up poor, so it's like, I don't know, when you grow up poor, you kind of have this hunger of like not being poor again.
Mm-hmm. I can very much relate to growing up poor. I have 3 kids and some of which have special needs and being a single income provider. So very, very much relate to that drive to do better, to be better. And, you've got to be there in different ways.
Yeah, which is challenging because then you can kind of rationalize like not spend as much time as, especially not, my kids are older now. I'm like, man, I should have spent more time. Like, everything. I always, tell young people to have kids, like it'll all work out, so just enjoy it while you can. It's all going to work out. But, when I was in it, it's like, it's so easy to like focus on work. So I, probably spent more time working than I should have, but I'll make it up with the grandkids, I guess. Hopefully, God willing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to talk about your, I see as kind of what I would call a superpower. Like you've created all these processes. You've gone from, the tech guy starting a business to now, really deep into cybersecurity, CMMC compliance. Right. We were talking about how you love to think about not only the CISO, but the CIO, the vCIO and vCISO offerings. We were talking about, brainstorming, chief AI officer. You like to think about the roles. You like to break it down into processes. What started you on that journey?
Well, I'll give a shout out to C-level ops. I don't know if you know those guys.
No.
C-level, they help MSPs kind of build out processes.
Okay.
And again, I guess it kind of ties together like I always said I was lazy because like I like to be, I'm always trying to figure out how to get the work done with the least amount of effort.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the mixture of that plus working with them, I guess I can kind of tell a story here. So in 2016, I got the bright idea to try to, let's see if we can acquire another MSP. And it's interesting because we're still just we're barely started. And my original partner was in a BNI group. So I told him that, and he just started bringing it up like, hey, if we're looking to acquire another MSP, if you guys know anybody. And there was a guy in the group that knew a guy that owned the Team Logic franchise, and he was ill, and he was looking to get out of it. So again, kind of going back to my real estate, like negotiations and like putting deals together. So I talked to this guy, and then over, I don't know how many months, negotiated a deal to acquire his book of, just acquired his book of business, didn't buy like the franchise off him. Because there was a lot of, I didn't want it. There was a lot of bad stuff on the books. So I just bought the book of business, and overnight, basically, I went from, I got 2 more engineers come on with us. Well, 1.5, one was part-time, and I doubled our client count.
Wow.
But I didn't, unfortunately, double our revenue because they were smaller and they weren't charging enough. And I quickly learned, like, the wheels started coming off because me and my team that I built and the clients that I built, like, they knew how we worked. Like, my team knew how we worked because we kind of just worked together every day. We were building this kind of over time. And then my clients, we taught them how to work with us, and we taught them how we do things. And it was a lot more efficient, and theirs wasn't. Theirs was like, everybody calls in for support. Nobody emails. Nobody uses the ticketing system. Nobody. And it was just, all of a sudden our phone just blowing up like crazy. And it was just, it was, I quickly realized like, wow, this is not going to work. And then again, bringing on 2 new people who didn't learn through osmosis. And I happened to go to IT Nation that year and met C-level at their booth, which had been acquired by PAX 8. But started working with them to build out our process, and we kind of just started from scratch. I mean, we had ConnectWise manage and stuff. We had our ticketing system, we had our RMM, but we really didn't build out like well-defined processes, right? You get a ticket, somebody takes care of it, and they close the ticket. We weren't tracking our billables at that point. We were just billing, typically a certain amount per month. And then we started working with them and just kind of build it out. And over time, they kind of helped me learn how powerful processes are.
Mm-hmm.
And then, my passion of like figuring out how to do things as efficiently as possible, like married with those processes, it's like just kind of just realize like, hey, we can figure out anything if we can figure out how to do it efficiently, and then create a process so we do it the same way every time, and then continue to push, like, can we make it more efficient? So I'm always telling my team, like, if there's not a process, just throw a skeleton process together and follow it. You're going to figure out what doesn't work, and then you improve the process over time. So like when we started on the, so I guess it's kind of hard not to tell you like how things progress without telling you some of the backstory. But my partner, when I did that acquisition, before we actually completed the acquisition, was out of the company because he started going through a divorce, kind of like right after we started the company. It was completely distracted. And so I ended up buying him out, which, again, was another lesson learned. So I had to buy him out, so I had to negotiate that. And then, kind of was just doing it on my own for about 3 or 4 years. We were growing, working with C-level, built out a lot of processes. We started working with char tech, because we're like, okay, we gotta get a salesperson who like can sell and enjoys selling versus me. So we engaged with char tech and hired our first salesperson, put him through the training, and then we're kind of marrying up like the char tech sales process and kind of how they package their solutions with our C-level processes, and then just kind of like what we're good at. I forgot to mention I got my CISSP kind of like right after I started right hand. So it's like playing off the security aspect of it.
That was pretty early, probably, as far as a CISSP goes then.
Yeah, there were still 10 modules, I think, that you had that well experience in.
Not that there's a ton now, but my point is that it was some years ago, right? So that was you were pretty early to the CISSP and cybersecurity game.
Yeah, and I feel like as MSPs, or I don't want to say all MSPs, but I would say at least the good ones, you're doing cybersecurity anyways. Mm-hmm. So I was doing a lot of the cybersecurity. It was interesting because I was looking for something to hang our hat on. Is like, this shows that we're cybersecurity experts, because just telling people you are doesn't always work. So I was like, I want to get a CISSP, but that's going to take some time. So I ended up I was like, I'll get my security plus first. And they were getting ready to change the test. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll just take it. I'll just take it next week. So I scheduled it next week before they changed the test, like the following week. And I passed it and getting that. And then I went and got my CISSP. If you could tell, like, certifications were pretty big for me. Like, when I was getting started, I have lots of certifications. But I forget where I was going with that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you're so early into cybersecurity. And I'm curious if was that just because of market demand, or did that somehow tie into your process as you were creating all these processes?
No, I would say I was looking for a differentiator when we were starting. So right hand. So I guess I was doing cybersecurity again. I ended up having our largest clients at the IT company I was at, and required a lot more cybersecurity. I mean, nothing like now, but like still required significant cybersecurity. I remember I put together, this was like 2006 or 2007. I put together this presentation for their executive team of like our strategy was to go virtualize everything, managed services for like all the IT services, cybersecurity services, and then I called them hosted applications because cloud wasn't a big word yet. Yeah. So like moving from Lotus Notes to hosted Exchange, this is our strategy, which was a pretty was pretty good head start, I guess. So I was doing a lot of security for those companies as we were going, and when I started the company, I'm like, I gotta have a differentiator, because everybody's. The old saying is like, what's your differentiator? We're the best, like everybody's saying we're the best.
Absolutely. So
I thought getting those certifications would be like something we can hang our hat on, is like, then we're cybersecurity is our strength. And so that's kind of why I went that route. Again, we were kind of doing it already. And working with larger clients, you're doing a lot more. There's just a lot more to worry about and deal with. And then, in 2019, I ended up, a buddy of mine, who was actually my boss at that IT company, I left, and he left maybe a few months later, but he was my boss the whole time. We kept in touch for a long time. I've known him now 24 years. But he was running sales and marketing for a big Microsoft partner here in Pittsburgh. And they were like, 100 employees, probably 25 million or more per year in revenue, working a lot with larger enterprise clients, all project work. And he ended up leaving there. And we kind of got together, have lunch. We would have lunch and drinks or whatever periodically throughout the years. And I was like, well, I'd love to do something with you at some point because, I always because I always used to tell people how, he was a pain in the butt as a manager, but he was very effective and he was very good at like recruiting the right people. And so I was like, I'd love to, do something with you at some point. And I kind of guess, he was in his 40s still and kind of retired. And so we kind of kept talking, negotiating, and then he ended up buying into the business to head up sales and marketing for me, like head up the business development side.
Oh, wow.
In 2019, like late second half of 2019. And he kind of had all those contacts with larger companies. So like we kind of had our Chartec process going and it was just getting started. We weren't like fully cranking it out, like we didn't have consistent sales, and he was coming and taking over. So he kind of went to what he knew, which is those contacts. And then we'd be talking to these larger clients, and we just started talking a lot about cybersecurity because he knew I had my CISSP, and that was a differentiator. So we just would be talking cybersecurity. We'd be talking cybersecurity to like people that are cybersecurity people, and I was like kind of amazed that, that again, it was kind of like some of the other things. Like you're like, wow, maybe I know this stuff more than I thought I did. Because they didn't know it as well as I thought they did. And, eventually we got our first like larger client who wanted us to do this vCISO cybersecurity program for them. And literally we just got me and two of my other team members just pulled the whiteboard out and just started like, well, what's this thing going to be? We just started, again, kind of making that skeleton of a process. Mm-hmm. What's going to be included, what's not going to be included, how's it going to work? And then, pitched it to them. They went for it. And that was kind of the launch of like focusing more on like doing cybersecurity programs. Mm-hmm. And then that was late 2019. And then companies started, CMMC started becoming a big thing, even though it was CMMC 1.0. But one of our clients that kind of came with me through this whole process was with me when I was with that other company. They were going to need to be CMMC compliant, and they reached out to me and asked me if I knew anybody that could help them with that. I'm like, well, this is how bad we are at marketing. They don't even know we do this stuff. So like, yeah, we could help you. And then we kind of put together their program. And then, again, we kind of got in with an MEP, Manufacturing Enterprise Partnership, out of Florida. And they basically get grant money. We started doing CMMC assessments. And then it was just like so we did a first assessment, probably not as efficient as we wanted to be. But it's just like, okay, well, how do we replicate this? And we got it super efficient, where we were getting great billable rates at the end there. And it was just kind of like kept doing it, kept improving it. Now we have a coaching option for our vCISO. So, a company might have IT people, but they just don't have the security knowledge, or the compliant, understand the frameworks. So we kind of just basically do a weekly call with them, walking them through. I always like to tell people, like, we're going to do the exact same process if you hired us to do it all for you. It's just you're going to do the work and we're going to walk you through it. So that's like what our coaching is. I kind of stole it off of C-level, to be honest. Like, it's like, wow, this is kind of a cool offering you guys have here. So we basically kind of took that and did our vCISO coaching.
I love that. Yeah. So, what advice would you give to your former self? If you could go back and look at yourself, 10 years ago, or sometime when you were kind of getting going, maybe 2 or 3 folks. Like, you've obviously come a long way, learned a lot. What advice would you give to your former self?
I would say something I've learned recently. I think I mentioned you before. I'm in Strategic Coach, Dan Sullivan, Strategic Coach. Mm-hmm. They're really big on unique ability. And like, you're basically kind of mapping out like, what am I good at? What am I really good at and also energizes me? What am I good at but doesn't energize me? What am I not so good at that doesn't energize me? And what do I like hate? I might be messing those up a little bit, but like,
yeah,
kind of learning, like, because again, you can kind of see I force myself to do a lot of things, like, like sales. No matter how good I am at it, it's going to drain me. I'm never going to be as effective as somebody who's energized by it. So I would say, like, if I could go back and talk to my younger self, now granted, that could change everything in my life for good or bad, right? I don't know, because I learned a lot by doing stuff I didn't really want to do. But like, I think figuring out that unique ability, that's what I tell my kids now, like, figure out what you love. You'll figure out a way to make money at it at some point.
Yeah.
Versus trying to figure out how to make money. It might not be something you love and then you're miserable. But I would say that's the biggest thing. Like, find the people whose unique ability is what you're not energized by. So for me, like, I probably should have got somebody to do sales a long time ago. I think I tried, which a lot of times doesn't work out with the partnerships, but I would say that's kind of the biggest thing. And also, you got to partner up with people that are, they don't have to necessarily be as motivated as you, but they got to be like aligned with like we're going to make this work no matter what. So if they're in charge of sales and and that's their thing, they got to be like, okay, come hell or high water, I'm going to make the sales successful. Versus like, people that, if they're not as hungry or they're not as motivated to get the end result, and there's tough times, it's hard to figure things out, they're gonna end up not there in the long run. So then you're kind of starting over.
Yeah. So most MSPs, if not all, struggle with sales, and specifically because we're usually tech introverts that aren't natural sales people. And so I love that you put yourself in improv and boxing to get out of your comfort zone and develop those skills and kind of be the owner-led sales. But how did you break past that? Like, what was the secret that helped unlock? Because I felt like the next level is where even less people make it, where you go and you hire somebody and you have a set up process. You don't have good expectations, then they fail. And then you repeat that, infinitely.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I have it figured out yet. I'm still trying to figure it out. So we, again, when John, my partner, he's still my current partner, but he's actually out of the business now. He came in to run sales and marketing, and it again, kind of like I'm saying over time, I don't like, he was already retired. He's got a good life. He didn't have the same like motivation I have. Good guy, nothing against him. It's just sales and marketing is tough, and like, if you're not willing to do whatever it takes, not willing to learn, if you feel like you've already, I think success also could breed like just like, I don't need to learn anymore. Like, I've already been there, done that. So I think like he had a lot of success, and coming into an MSP, it's not the same. Like selling, man, it's like selling a project. There's not a ton of risk on a project. Like, if the project goes bad, you never use that company again, right? Like, you got and then you lost some money that you got to go to somebody else to do it right. But managed services, we're trying to do a 3-year agreement. There's a lot of risk, right? So like, it's just a lot harder to sell. You got to sell the value a lot more. And a lot of times you're going in for people that weren't even thinking they needed all this, and trying to convince them that they need all of it, versus like a project. They're like, well, I need to migrate to Microsoft 365. I need to find somebody to do it. And then you just got to convince them you're the right company to do it. So, I guess going back to sales, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. Like right now, I'm trying to, I always got, unfortunately, I didn't have, like, my partner didn't develop sales processes because he was just kind of had the contacts and was good at selling. So now I'm trying to build sales processes because I don't have that like natural sales. And so I'm kind of like trying to figure out, okay, what's the process that we can generate consistent leads? What's the marketing processes? What's the, kind of when I'm doing podcasts and stuff. And I do have a full-time business development manager that's, or sales, account executive that's new. He's been here a few months. So again, going to strategic coach, I kind of went there and I was like kind of telling him what's going on. And like, you need to hire somebody. Cause again, I was like, all right, bootstraps, let's grab the bootstraps and let's get out there and start selling. Yeah. They're like, you need to hire somebody. Why would you take all that back on? So I was like, yeah, you're right. So I started looking for somebody, got somebody. He actually just went out to Chartex. I'm kind of circling back to some previous things that I think we're on the right path, and we're kind of building that all out. So I don't want to sound like I got it figured out. We did have, with the security and larger clients, we did have some success over the past few years that helped us grow. But there's a lot of M&A in that space as well, as you can imagine. This is what I think I think it's going to be like HIPAA. Like HIPAA drove like all this massive consolidation in healthcare. I think you're going to see the same thing, a lot of the DoD stuff. So it's going to become so expensive to get all that compliance in place that people are going to end up consolidating. So there's a lot of M&A. So that means you got this great big client, this contract, but then they get acquired by a company bigger than them, and they bring it all back in house. So kind of getting back to what's the process to generate leads for us. We want clients that are cybersecurity conscious. Like we don't want some or small companies just don't care. I mean, some MSPs don't even care about cybersecurity, but a lot of small businesses still just don't care about cybersecurity. And for us, it's like our target client profile. You have to either be driven by compliance, or you have to like maybe had something happen in the past in cybersecurity. Like you value it, because we're not going to sit there and try and convince you that cybersecurity is serious and you need to take it serious and keep fighting with you on it. So that's kind of our focus in trying to like drive those leads, and then get my, I'm usually, we're usually tag teaming right now, me and the sales guy, but get him to the point where he's self-sufficient, and then just kind of keep building that team. I had again, I'm still learning. So I had a fractional CMO that I hired, and again, didn't work out. So hiring people is the hardest thing, I think, especially for introverts, because I think you like want everybody to be like what they say they're going to be and do what they say they're going to do, and you're like, oh, should be awesome, and then it doesn't always work out.
They definitely can. Sometimes the best salespeople, the best sale they make is the one to get me to hire them. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
What have you learned about the hiring process? Have you brought in other ways to have process or tools to make that more predictable?
Honestly, we just slow it down. We've slowed it down a lot. So it used to kind of be, oh man, we need a body. We need a body, or somebody quit. Now we got to hurry up and scramble. We've really just slowed it down and like drawn the process out a little longer. I wouldn't say it's long, but like, and it sounds longer when I describe like all the steps, but like, again, kind of making it more of a process, where before it would just be like, all right, schedule some interviews, go in, fly by the seat of your pants, ask questions, come up with troubleshooting questions that you can kind of think of at the top of your head, to, kind of like, okay, let's have our, quick 15-minute phone interview, kind of just like you're selling. You don't go straight into your discovery. You're going to have a 15-minute call to see if it's even worth spending that time. So, having that quick 15-minute phone interview, just see if which screens out almost everybody. So many people, you're just like, what do you, what's your career goals, or what are you looking to, do in your next position? And it's just like, well, I don't know, I'm just looking for a job. It's like, all right. But just kind of slowing down and going through those processes, making sure multiple people on a team interview them, having a good set of questions to draw out, like what are their core values? What are they really, excited about? Are they going to tell you like true things, or is it going to be like, the old, like, tell me one of your weaknesses and they tell you some strength. That's their weakness. Yeah. So like figuring out how to ask questions to, I guess it's kind of that open-ended question, philosophy, like getting them to talk, versus in the past, you'd ask leading questions. Do you like fixing problems? Yeah. Yeah. So
this must be the right guy. Let me hire that one.
Yeah. And we started doing, I think I mentioned last time, we started doing Colby, the Colby profile. on all of our employees. And we haven't really hired or not hired somebody based on that, but I do think it's helpful to kind of know, because it also, as a manager, it'll tell you kind of how you relate to that person, which is pretty cool. Like if they're not a fast start or they're a fact finder and they're not a fast start, you're going to have to really make sure you're explaining all the minute details before they'll ever actually move forward with something versus just like telling them, like a fast start that's not a fact finder, you can kind of just tell them something vague and they're going to go get after it. So understanding that. And then, we've done DISC profiles as well. I also do like the DISC profile. Again, mainly not so much I guess if someone's way off, you're probably not going to hire them, right? Like someone's a high DEI and you're hiring them to be a support help desk person, they're probably not going to be very good. So I guess, but typically we're talking to people that they typically fit the profile. So it's more of just understanding their, how you can communicate with them, what they're, and like high S's, like, like they're not going to tell you there's a problem until it's too late. So like understanding that so you can kind of like try and draw out a problem ahead of time is pretty helpful. But again, I wouldn't say we use them as much during the hiring process as we should. When we hired our sales guy, I don't know if you know KLA. They're like a sales training, coaching. I think they do marketing too. But they kind of helped us recruit him, and they use this profiling tool that kind of identifies, well, one, if they're sales at all, but then also are they a hunter versus a farmer and things like that. I forget what it's called, but we've used that for him. I know Chartech uses DISC. I think you mentioned there's. I think I took it. I don't know what the results are yet, but you mentioned when we were talking last time.
Yeah, we've developed some of our own. So I'm big into trying to understand what maybe my unique ability is, what my team's is, and like you said, however you want to slice it, fact finder versus quick start or just different verbiage, whether it's in your 80% or your 20, it's still just understanding people. Yeah, has always been a passion of mine, and wanting to build that strong culture, which means understanding the people I have and doing my best to let only the right people on as we do hire. It's been a long journey because, people are the ultimate, thing to try to understand, right? They're not, it's not a network that's reproducible. And so, it's been a really interesting journey to try to more deeply understand people, and why you come at it that way. And
I'm sure being IT people and introverts, it's like even harder for us because this is like, I don't naturally want to get into what people are feeling and,
Right.
all those things. It's just kind of like, you got a job to do your job. It's just kind of kind of being a go-getter, like get after things. It's always like, well, why aren't you just getting after this and getting this done? So it does help.
It can be really tough in a team of introverts to talk about something. And any questions? Anybody say anything? Crickets, because everybody's
yeah. I'm always like, when we have our, team meetings and it's just like trying to get people to talk. It's like the quietest room, and you're like, well, I'm going to give a kind of a company up. We do EOS, so like every quarter you got to do a company update. And it's like, does anybody care about this? Like, are you guys just like, yeah, whatever? But it's just how engineers are. They just sit there and listen.
Yeah. As we've tried to learn the nuances of people and the actual person, like try to figure out how to draw them in, because what I found is some of the most introverted people, if you ask the right question, can all of a sudden be very talkative because maybe that's their area or something they're passionate about. And so they'll all of a sudden open up and talk. And there's been folks at like our company is like, I didn't know that person really talked. They opened up and talked to me about this. And so that's been a gift. I wanted to switch gears for a moment, Jason, and ask, what's the biggest lesson you've learned over all your years in business?
Biggest lesson. I would say, I mean, I think it's really a lesson in life is just like, again, kind of understand you can learn anything if you're willing to.
Mm-hmm.
If you're willing to kind of, again, I think it's just an introvert quality to some extent of, I mean, not only introverts, but like introverts are really reflective and kind
Mm-hmm.
of self introspective. So you tend to see your flaws.
Very well.
Yeah. So I think like with that, it's been very like, okay, I'm not good at this. I need to get better at this. I need to learn this. And, also learning that like, again, I probably sound like I'm a motivational junkie, but like I went to Tony Robbins, I think actually kind of around the time I started the company. And, he talked about like things that motivate people. And there's like 4 of them, like growth, contribution. I forget the other 2, but they're the negative ones. I don't know if it was like status or like power, maybe. But like that kind of like stuck with me. Like that's when I'm the most like happy, when I'm growing, learning something new, or I'm contributing. I haven't, probably, being focused on business and taking care of family. I haven't probably spent as much time in the contribution as I like, but I know like, volunteering at the fish fry for the church and stuff, it just kind of like makes you happy, so,
Mm-hmm.
or if you, do something for charity or help somebody in general, it just kind of makes you happy. So like understanding those 2 things, like personal growth, it's like the one thing that you can control, right? Like you can't control a lot of other things, but you control your personal growth. Like, what are you learning? What are you pushing? Um, so that's kind of been my biggest, I wouldn't say just necessarily in business, but life. And luckily I learned it, going way back when I was a computer associates and I was getting those certifications. I remember I have these like weird epiphanies, and they're like probably, not as profound as I think they are, but I remember just being like studying for my CCNA, and like I already did a couple other certifications, but I'm like, holy, I paid $50 for this book and taught myself all this stuff. And I was like, I could teach myself anything with books. Like this is pretty amazing. And
Yeah.
I'm a guy who, I don't think I read a book, maybe one book. I might have read How to Eat Fried Worms or something like that in elementary school, but like somehow breezed through school without like ever really getting good at reading.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think that's why it was like an epiphany. I mean, like, holy moly. Like, so I just kind of like, just never stopped reading, which we were talking about previously. Just like always have something you're reading. Then the challenge is like limiting what you read, and like not like thinking the bookstore is a buffet and you're just piling everything on your plate that you're never going to be able to eat.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's, I'd say, the biggest thing.
Yeah. If there was one thing you could do over or differently, what would that be?
I mean, besides spend more time with my kids when they were younger, not that I was like a totally like, like dirtbag or anything. I'm just, I probably could have took more days off work and vacations and stuff like that. But I would say, yeah, one thing I would do differently, probably just, I don't know. I like partnerships. I do even though I'm an introvert, you tend to like be by yourself. I love doing stuff with people. Like as far as like business, like I always liked partners, but unfortunately I haven't had a ton of luck finding the right partners that are like as motivated as I am. But I would say that's either probably just not do as many partnerships. But again, I learn something each time. But yeah, it does kind of create this like this pull back in the wrong direction when you got to separate from a partner, because now you got to like fill that back up. You got to take on more roles. If you probably end up spending more money than if you didn't have to buy out the partner, right? You can get employees that are, like my one employee, my service manager, he works harder than like my business partners have. I mean, he's just finding the right people that are motivated and go-getters, and you can have people on your team and reward them, adequately and everything to keep them inspired and motivated. But they'll work just as hard as somebody has equity, if they're inspired. So I think maybe maybe find the right people that are inspired enough to, again, but I'm not against partnerships. So I guess that's why I'm like hesitant to say it, but I just know my luck hasn't been there with the partnerships, but I probably do. I'll probably end up doing it again. Cause that's, I think the second one worked out better than the first one. Actually better than the first two.
Maybe the trajectory is improving.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah. It's finding one that's like, again, I think as committed as you are, it's kind of like finding a spouse, right? Like you gotta find a spouse that's as committed to you as you are to them, that like, no matter what, once we say yes, we're not going to, we're not there. Like, it's not an option to leave. Like so like, it's kind of the same with the partner. Like once we say and they always say it's like a marriage, but like once we say this is our goal and this is what we're going to, we're both going to do whatever it takes to get this done. And, again, you can have employees be that same way. And then, maybe you sell at some point and you reward them. But those have been, I would say, some of my biggest, I don't say regrets, but like, maybe I'd do it over if I had to go back. Maybe just have those people as employees instead.
Yeah. What's a myth about running an MSP that you'd love to dispel?
I would say some of the biggest myth, I'm sure you've probably seen this, but the biggest myth is that people won't pay for, you look at people charging, we're probably $250 a seat and up. So you look at people charging that when you're, starting an MSP, or maybe you're a few years into it, and you're like, there's no way people are going to pay that, and you're not charging enough. But then you're not, you can't deliver what you're promising, which has been one of my, I guess, another lesson I kind of learned a long time ago, which I quote from a book. I quote all the time from books. It's like it's like so much of my knowledge comes from books. But like Gary Keller, I'll try to get back to what I was saying. But Gary Keller, founder of Keller Williams, he wrote a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which I read when I first got my real estate license, but then I reread it like when I started writing. And he talks about like modeling. So you want to find like people that are doing what you want to do, right? Getting the results you want to get, and then you want to model them. But what people do, and I've done this so many times, it's kind of embarrassing, but like what people do is they look at the model and then they tweak it, or they know better, and they don't get the results, and they're like, well, that doesn't work. And it's like, no, you gotta look at the model, you gotta follow the model until you're getting the same results as them, and then you can tweak it a little bit and see if you can get better results. But like, I've kind of done that so many times myself. but wait, what did I say I was gonna get back to?
Just the myth about the MSP. And
so I think like when you're an MSP, like look and see what those people are doing, because there's a reason they're charging that much. They're not just charging that much because they just, they're greedy or something. It's just like,
right.
And for me, kind of was it like the other thing I learned from that book, that's kind of why I guess I originally brought up the book, is, he talks in the book that like, and again, I think this is probably a myth, but like that people fall into is like, you think that you're the only one who can do it. Like your clients love you because of the way you do it. And like, how are you going to replace yourself with, another person because they don't do it as good as you, and clients aren't going to like them. And then you'll lose that client. And, he's talking about real estate agents, and he's like, they don't like you. They like your standards. So you need to create processes and procedures that give them those standards, and then they'll stick with you no matter who's, actually doing the work. And that kind of like, I think that's a myth that people, again, kind of me too, like the clients love me. And sometimes you don't even know how you're doing it, that like people like working with you. That's just like, so you don't know how to systematize it. That's kind of a big myth, is like, it's not you, it's your standard. So like kind of tying it back to how much you charge per month, like at some point you're going to need somebody else to do what you're doing. If you're doing a good job, which, it's questionable if you're not charging enough, then you need to charge enough so that you're able to replicate yourself and deliver that same service that you said you're going to do. Because when you start out and you're doing all the work, you're able to charge less because it's like you're just supporting yourself, right? Your tool stack might not be that expensive. So,
right.
But at some point, you're going to have to build teams and systems and infrastructure. And if you're not charging enough, you're not going to be able to do that. And you're not going to be able to deliver that standard that people love. And that's what happens a lot. We talk to, I'm sure, again, you probably seen this a lot. We talk to prospects and they're like, then they take like 2 weeks to get back to me and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, how much are you paying? It's like, $500 for like 20 people. It's like, well, no wonder. It's like they have to have, to say they're charging $50 a user. We charge $250. Well, they have to have 5 times the amount of clients to do the same amount of business as us. So who do you think is going to give you better service? Like one that has 5 times the clients, or us who has 5, one out of 5 clients that we can just spoil, which is kind of always, been our thought process is like, if we can have less clients that we can then spoil and take care of and do the proper guidance and the proper cybersecurity and put a vCIO in place and put a vCISO in place, then you're going to be able to deliver that standard. You're going to be able to take care of them. You're going to be able to grow. They're going to stick with you. And you're going to be able to keep the right people too, because that's if you don't charge enough, how are you going to get the right people on your team?
Right.
So, but we still see it all the time. It's frustrating. It's like, you see these agreements, you're like, how are they even delivering service for this amount?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm curious your take on this. It seems like you're early in virtualization, early in cloud, pretty early. It sounds like really in cybersecurity, CMMC. So you've been early in a lot of, key areas. What is it that you're looking forward to, in terms of what's coming up? Like what's got you excited?
Well, I'm sure it's probably obvious to everybody, the answer, but AI, it's just like, all everybody's talking about it. Every conference. I did a presentation last week with, or a webinar last week with, I don't know if you know Hatz AI, Jimmy Hatz.
Jimmy Hatzel.
Yeah. So they're, we did a webinar with those guys for a investment casting institute, which is like foundries and stuff. And I kind of joked around that like everywhere you go, everybody's talking about it. At the conferences, that's all they're talking about is AI. Even the caterers are talking about, how they're going to use AI for their food service. Like it's just AI is everywhere. So I am excited about it because I do love technology. Like, we've gotten really good at cybersecurity, but ultimately I'm a geek. Like I just love technology. So like, I've my problem is like I probably shouldn't put my hands in it as much as I do, because like I kind of like find myself kind of wanting to spend more time doing more like CTO type stuff. But like so I've been really like myself playing a lot with automation and AI, like using things like make.com and all the different models and Airtable and some I built out a lot of different content generating stuff, and then I'm like augmenting some of our tools like to streamline a process. Like one day I'm like, well, how do we know if like we got 50 workstations that haven't checked into Sentinel-1 for 30 days and we're paying Sentinel-1 for all these agents? And like, so I basically created a make.com automation that queries Sentinel-1 and figures that out and then creates tickets for us if somebody hasn't checked in for 30 days. So there's like all these little things you can do to kind of like streamline things without, again, extra people or, and then, I think what we were talking about, in our kind of our pre-show, or whatever you want to call it, is kind of the chief artificial intelligence officer. So I kind of see the need, just like the vCIO, the vCISO, of having this chief artificial intelligence officer that can kind of go in and guide small businesses through a process of how to implement these technologies and implement them securely. Because I don't know if you saw, there was just like a research study about like 40% of employees admitted to sending confidential data into ChatGPT and things like that. So
and
like
that's just the ones that admitted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So it's like if you don't have a policy of how you're allowed to use these things, and then you don't give them something that is authorized to use, well, they're gonna find it on their own, right? So helping them through the security aspect of it, but then start going through, just like we do in the cyber side, we're walking through what are your business processes, trying to figure out the criticality, recovery time objectives, all those different things. You can kind of do the same thing on the AI side. Like, what is your business process? How do you do it? And kind of, if you got the right person delivering a service, then they should be able to see how you can automate things, how you can build out efficiencies, and kind of help them do those, right? And then implement them over time. And obviously, from labor perspective, you got to kind of figure out a flow so it's not like a full-time job for somebody. Mm-hmm. But you kind of start off small, just like of just like, okay, well, how do I take one small thing out of here and then build on it for this client? And the thing that I'm excited about is I think it's the cybersecurity is super important, but it's not like clients aren't excited about it, right? Like they're not like, right. Oh man, I really want cybersecurity. Where with AI, it's like, listen, we might be able to pay for ourselves. Like we might be able to help you build up efficiencies that you don't have to hire the next person, or you don't have to, or when someone leaves, maybe you don't have to replace them, or whatever. You might be able to do more. You might be able to sell more. You might be able to. So I think that's like a lot more interesting for clients that want to talk to you, mm-hmm. Right? So right now we lead with cybersecurity, but I think if we can move towards leading with AI, with knowing that we're kind of a cybersecurity-first company, so you kind of know that's handled, but you know that we're going to be able to help you drive AI adoption. I think that could be huge, right? But it's always, you still got to worry about the people. I mean, build out the process, but then I think with AI, though, well, even the vCISO stuff, you still need people that can take that process and understand it and then deliver it well to your clients, right? Like, mm-hmm. Not everybody can do that. Like, not everybody can do the vCISO. Even though we have a process and we use a framework, it's not like we're making our own frameworks. We use the frameworks at hand, but you still have to be able to run those meetings, run cybersecurity steering meetings with executives, be able to talk to them kind of on a business level.
Absolutely.
And not everybody can do that. So that's the biggest challenge.
What is your take on the opportunity right now with AI? As an MSP, should you be just starting conversations, or are you driving revenue with it? Is it wait and see and sit on the sidelines for now?
Well, again, I guess it comes down to what kind of MSP you are. If you're an MSP that's charging enough, you should probably put some effort into getting somebody up to speed to deliver that. Because, mm-hmm. I'm sure one of the biggest challenges with MSP, if you're not delivering it, somebody else is going to come in and deliver it, and then they can take your whole client versus just that one. Someone comes in and says, we offer this chief artificial intelligence officer solution or offering, and you don't, well, you might lose your entire client versus just them getting that business, right? Mm-hmm. So I think if you're charging enough, you should be probably doing it. If you're charging $50 a user, you should probably figure out how to deliver what you're already saying you're delivering, because you're probably not delivering it.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
I think it just depends on your maturity level as an MSP.
Mm. What's the one book that you would recommend everybody read?
That's hard. That's like, which one of your child's a favorite? It kind of depends on what you're looking for. But I guess if I had to press one book, I'd always have to say the Bible or something like that. But on a business side, Miracle Morning was really a big thing for me when I started, because it, and there was like all these variations of it, like the millionaire entrepreneur morning, and then like there was real estate ones and parenting ones, but like kind of the gist is like working on yourself first. So getting up early, having like your ritual of, they call them the savers, but like these different things: journaling, reading, exercising, meditating, all that. I don't do all of them out still, but like I still do. I get up at 4:30 every morning. I read every morning. And I was journaling. I kind of dropped that. I don't know. I'm a big believer, if something's not effective or working for you, don't keep doing it because it is a ritual. But reading, obviously always adds value. But I would say that's a good short book that like drastically changed like the way I approach self-improvement, and then it kind of gives you that space too to continue that improvement, right? Like if you're already, we always check, because my service manager, I kind of got him doing it when he started working for me. He gets up earlier than I do now, but
oh wow,
he's he lost like 100 pounds. He's like looks, he's like huge. He's a big dude. He's like 6'4",
wow,
like 230. Almost, I think he's like 6% body fat. He said he's like pretty jacked dude, but when he started working for me, he was like 330. He was strong because we used to lift weights together, and he was putting up a lot of weight. But he does it as well. And you just we always joke around. It's just like before everyone else is getting up, we're like on half a day in. So like it kind of just gives you that space to like work on yourself, or maybe if you got something you need to focus on, you got that space to focus on it when everyone else is sleeping, so you're not going to get interrupted. So I think it was a good book. Yeah. I can give you a lot of other ones, but
that's a great book by Hal Elrod.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, how could folks find you online?
Well, I don't have a ton of places to find me. Obviously we have our website, righthandtechnologygroup.com. And then probably the best place is going to be LinkedIn, to just / Jason Vanzin. I post there pretty much every day. I put a newsletter out every Wednesday. So I'm trying to build up the LinkedIn. I don't know if your luck has been on it. It takes a lot of effort on LinkedIn. It's not like some of the other places. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. Well, this is amazing. I feel like I could do this all day with you if I was able to, but I just want to thank you for the gift. I've learned so much, and just thank you for being on MSP Mindset.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was a great interview.